right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon Reviews. 4 reviews, as usual, up this week. The first of which is Dicey Dungeons. Dicey Dungeons is the rare, not given game. Just something I selected from the backlog when something doesn't work out for one reason or another. Dicey Dungeons, let's see, is actually it's a play on words and also quite literal, because the dicey in the dungeons is not just referring to the diciness of going through a dungeon, because this is a roguelike, and that means it's difficult, and the difficulty starts fairly brutal and just ramps up from there. And it's also because the dice, you are playing as literal dungeon dice, as in your avatars are all transformed into dice for the reasons of the motif of the game. Because the premise here is you're actually on like a cosmic game show of some sort, and your host / tormentor is Lady Luck herself, who promises you fabulous prizes, or rather, the potentiality of getting your ultimate desire should you survive through the entire dungeon, which is easier said than done, because each character has to get through 20, let's say, episodes of dungeoneering, and in increasing difficulty, not just, let's say, vertically, as in, the deeper you go, the harder it gets, but one of the tricks of this game is that each character class is more difficult to use in ascending order. Like, your starting dice, or your starting die, I guess, in this case, is the warrior, who, pretty straightforward. He works out in very typical cut-down indie JRPG fashion. That being said, the entire battle system is also fashioned around dice. So, you will roll a starting amount of dice. Maybe 3, maybe less, depending on the character. I can't remember if it's always 3. I mean, it's been hard to remember since you have to play as 5 characters. But ultimate point is, you roll the dice, and one of the things to keep in mind is having the bigger number isn't always better, depending on what you've got equipped. There are some that work under the usual principles of how dice goes, bigger number better, but there are also attacks and skills that are that can only be accessed via up to a certain number. For example, like if I'm remembering, like one of the thieves' starting attacks, you can access up to 3, and if you have more than that, you can't use it. And indeed, there are other attacks or abilities that will allow you to add numbers, remove numbers, split dice, clone dice. Everything is dice in this game. Like, in terms of interactions, except when it's blackjack. And to that, I mean, each character class has a very different way of operating. Like I said, the warrior is fairly straightforward. The thief gets a little trickier, because his big thing is he can steal a random attack from the enemy. Let's see, I'm trying to remember who was next. Like, the robot, he's the one who plays, like, blackjack. That is to say, instead of like getting you get this starting dice, and instead of having the attacks or abilities that you have equipped, you have this list, and you put in dice, and like the starting number is 10. If you hit 10, you will get bonuses. Like you can get another dice. You can get healing, very useful. Or you can get a straight up attack for 5 damage, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. And then there's the Inventor, who plays basically like a cannibal. That is to say that all of your tech parts, the Inventor will convert one into a rather powerful ability, but then that thing gets spent. So you're kind of playing this game of gathering equipment to be used in further battles. And the final one, which is not mentioned on the Steam page, is the Witch, who's the trickiest of all to use because kind of similar to the robot in you access this list from dice. The thing is, the dice, you're not playing a game of luck, blackjack here. You are trying to access your attacks. Or a power. You assign a power. You assign that to each level of dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and for ultra powerful attacks, double sixes, which I was not a fan of.
Wouldn't you have to get a double 6 to activate whatever's on double 6?
You have to put in two, not necessarily a double 6 on that turn.
Oh, okay.
It's still, harder to access than what turns out to be practical most of the time. Of course, and the thing of it is, when you access things, you also place it on a plane, and you can only have 4 things at a time. And also, as you level up, you can get the choice of having a space for upgraded attacks or a prepared attack. Something that would come up at the start. Not surprisingly, that the Magician is listed as 5-star difficulty, and that's the one I couldn't clear before I got fed up with the game. Yeah, I mean, disclosure time. Like a lot of roguelikes, I tend to not play all that much because, the whole crushing difficulty permadeath thing doesn't really gel with how I like to do things. In fairness, I played this for like 5-6 hours, got to know all the characters, but I'm like, this isn't a game I'm going to play for that long because it definitely follows the core constituencies of a roguelike. Permadeath, randomization, difficulty. Just keep that in mind. It's definitely one of the, odder variants of that permutation, but it's still recognizable along the core coefficients. It's just in terms of gameplay, it's basically it's a JRPG versus Rogue, basically. In terms of the graphics, the game is surprisingly cute for what you might be expecting here.
I mean, you're playing as dice. That sounds pretty cute.
Not necessarily. Like, it depends on how far you go with the anthropomorphization. But it's all very British, if for a lack of a better term. Like, there's definitely a wry undercurrent to the whole proceedings. Special highlight to the music, which was far and away the best part of the game, if I'm being honest. You'd expect something like maybe typical American game show music, something you'd hear on The Price is Right or Jeopardy, or insert popular game
Now
show.
I'm mentally imagining the opening tune to What Happened.
Yeah. Instead, you get jazz.
Huh.
Yeah, really good jazz too. Like, it's and it doesn't feel out of place. It's like I said, it's surprising but not unwelcoming. And yeah, and that's about it for the overview. I could probably go into like the intricacies of like attack, how the attacks work and all that stuff, but that's probably best left to the player. Like, also, I suppose the last note I will go there is like even the more straightforward characters, weaponry operates differently. Like the thief using a dagger may hit for less than a warrior, but can overall hit for more because paired with the right stuff.
Because deeps and stuff.
Like, I was able to get the achievement for doing over 20 points in damage with the thief.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a weird permutation of that linear warrior quadratical wizard. I mean, it's not quite that steep, but the thief surprised me with how he played. Probably my favorite character overall, because tricky without being maybe too stooped in a gimmick to be all that enjoyable. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, and as far as the game goes, yeah, this is actually really good. For once, the feeling of having a very simple JRPG interface didn't feel like it was too simple to be good. If you paid attention to some of the other indie JRPG ish inspired things that we've reviewed over the years, I'm not a fan of the thing that stripping down to the barest bones to where it's not that interesting mechanically. Here it actually serves a purpose because it's not about so much the strategizing with the menu system, it's strategizing with the dice system. And having a very simple basic interface makes a lot of sense here. But it's also not something that were I to play. If I were to play this for say 20, 30 hours, I would get bored of, because I've reached the limits of what this thing can do, and I want to, I'm going to play something else now. Like, and let me see here. Yeah, I think that's about it in terms of the game and its gameplay and all of those factors. So that leads us to price. This game will clock in at $14.99. That's a reasonable price for a game of this magnitude. And at least on Steam, because this game has seen release on, if I'm remembering correctly, in terms of the console, I think it's on the Nintendo Switch now, but I don't think it's hit the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation family or the Xbox family, let's say, at this moment in time. And I'm not sure if the mobile versions are out yet. But there are a couple of bundles here. There is the Dicey Dungeons soundtrack for $6.99. There's the Dicey Dungeons soundtrack bundle for $19.78. And then there's the Terry Cavanaugh collection, because Terry Cavanaugh is the developer of Dicey Dungeons and a couple other games you may have heard of, namely VVVVVV and Super Hexagon. And this is clocking in at $22.97. So this is a bit of a conundrum because, okay, I can actually go into the Terry Cavanaugh collection because I have played all the games here. Not for review, but, just I've played them at certain points. And I do think if you're a neophyte to Terry Cavanaugh, the best purchase here would be his bundle here, because not only are you getting Dicey Dungeons, but you're getting V6, which is probably the most well-known game of this collection. And also, it's renowned as being a pretty good indie platformer with, its own particular hook and feel and all that stuff. Super Hexagon, definitely the least of the three here, not just in terms of quality, but in terms of this is a how long can you last kind of game. It's like you're going through a hexagonal maze, and the purpose there is to see how long you last. We've reviewed a couple of these things in different forms. Super Hexagon, like if you're clocking over a minute, you're doing really, really good. It's a short game. Honestly, the kind of thing that would potentially work better on mobile. But here in a package set, sure, that'll work. But the thing that keeps me from completely recommending the Terry collection here is the fact that you probably own, at the very least, V6. It's been out for what, a decade plus? Like, a favorite game of, some friends of the show, that sort of thing. And I probably, like, if you have that, I probably couldn't recommend this on top of Super Hexagon. I'm like, I just didn't think that much of Super Hexagon, even though it is fairly cheap. So if you've already got that, I'd recommend the soundtrack from it. Because not only is the soundtrack worth listening to, it's worth listening to outside of the game. Now, like I said, it's shockingly good. And yeah, I suppose that's all my bases covered. Any other questions, comments, or concerns about Dicey Dungeons?
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
All right. So that'll do it for Dicey Dungeons. Be sure to tune in after the break, as Petty Fan will be tackling more dark.